Hi and welcome once again to our series of podcasts on AIML and data science applications in finance that we at IIQF are conducting. We have already done a lot of episodes on this particular area. So today's topic of discussion is the tech stack required for AIML and data science applications in finance. Tech stack meaning the hardware, software requirements. It's a very basic topic, but a very important one. I mean, with a lot of people have this questions: what kind of machines they should be using. I'm not talking at a production level in terms of the company perspective, but again, at an individual level perspective as well, right? Which is like the core audience that we are having here, right? So to talk us through this discussion topic, we have with us Sanjay once again. So thanks, Sanjay, for joining.
Yeah, thank you.
So yes. Without further ado, directly to the question, what are the tech stack requirements for different functions in AIML and finance?
Yeah. So that's even a more relevant topic, because one thing is that most of our aspirants, they want to get onto this bandwagon,
right?
But they are a bit maybe somehow not clear about what kind of infrastructure support or maybe hardware and software requirements they would have in their laptop or desktop, right, to have enough processing power to do this, to pursue the kind of use cases.
Yeah, absolutely. This is like a very common question that we receive from all the aspirants that we interact with. So that's why we thought that.
So the first thing is that the age of single core or dual core has gone.
Right.
Now not most of the laptops, but you have from every manufacturer, laptop manufacturer, you have these mid price segment which has multi-core processor. Now I want to emphasize that most of the AIML algorithms are involved with a lot of calculation on the runtime.
Right.
So they do real-time analytics or real-time calculation.
Okay.
That requires parallel computing or some kind of a distributed computing.
Absolutely.
Right. So this multi-core processor,
right,
like Intel 5 or maybe AMD Ryzen 5, right? Or maybe for higher application like deep learning, Intel 7 or AMD Ryzen 7 would definitely be required.
Okay.
Would definitely be required, and the minimum specification being multi-core processor, at least Intel 5 or AMD Ryzen.
Okay.
So that's the first one.
So we'll go into the deep learning aspect later on. First, let kindly explain the general machine that is required for the normal.
Let me put that straight. So as we talk, that multi-core is required, but the minimum specification is Intel 5 or AMD Ryzen 5.
Okay.
So that's the first one. Then the second aspect is that how much RAM you need.
Absolutely.
That is a bit debatable. Some says that 8 GB is not enough.
Right.
Or 16 GB is the minimum.
Okay.
Right. But I have seen that with mostly light touch AIML and like few of the regression models, the regression variants or counterparts of AIML, right? And also the data science application, 8 GB serves the purpose, right? From a learning perspective, right? But obviously 16 GB would be required when you start building the models where you want to build models for some use case, right? And you want to further, do multiple, simulations of that model, right? So 8 to 16 GB is the minimum, right? Right. Depending upon what is where you are in your learning journey and you are experimenting.
Right.
Then the third thing would be maybe the era of HDD, hard disk drive has gone, right? Now is the solid state drive, which efficiently allows you to perform the storage, right? As well as also it will enhance the code execution. It will enable the swift code execution.
Sure.
Right. So when it comes to the starting level SSD drive, first of all, you should not take any laptop or any specification. Choose any specification which has HDD. Right. You should be very clear about that. You need a SSD, and within that, if 512 maybe GB would be there, that would be very suitable for the task which you are going to execute and perform.
Right.
Right. And then there are two other specifications that you need a powerful GPU, right? So there's a specific GPU requirement which generally nowadays invariably is available for most of AIML type of gaming laptops which are meant for gaming,
right.
which is NVIDIA GeForce, maybe GTX 1660.
Right.
So that specification is available for most of the gaming algorithms, and that would be required.
Okay.
Right. And last but not least, because we are talking about in data science, a lot about visualization.
Right.
Talk through that. Right. What a data science does at the end eventually. What is it? Their byproduct.
Correct.
A lot of visualization.
Correct.
So you need a high resolution, right, display. Right. And that should be 1920 into 1080. Right. That kind of display specifications which you need for your laptop to produce your output.
Okay.
Right. So that is the specification for hardware.
Right.
And that's where maybe you have to keep in mind, bear in mind, so that the prerequisites are met.
Right. Absolutely. Okay. So now, as where I interrupted you is again, and what are the specific requirements if you want to go into more advanced AIML, maybe deep learning and all that?
Yeah. So deep learning specifically, the kind of specification which I maybe put it together right beforehand would serve most of the purposes.
Right.
You would be able to do most of the areas of supervised learning, even unsupervised learning.
Right.
But specifically with respect to deep learning and reinforcement learning, right, they are more intensive.
Okay.
Computationally intensive.
Right.
Your calculations are so many.
Uh-huh.
Right, and it need to be performed on real time, and there's no parallelization and distribution of that computation.
Okay.
Right, unless you do it, you will keep the algorithm will frustrate you. It will keep running, and somewhere in the middle, it can completely be stopped, paused.
Okay.
It will be gone. Right, it will be terminated automatically.
Absolutely.
It will not have enough computational strength.
Right.
Right. So for that, obviously, you need instead of the 8 or 16 GB, you need 32 GB RAM.
Right.
That's the difference. And there, these specifications are a bit casted in stone. If you want to perform deep learning, you have to have 32 GB.
Right.
It is non-negotiable kind of thing.
Okay. And maybe i7 kind of.
Right. So even the processor has to be Intel i7 or maybe AMD Ryzen 7.
Right.
Even you need a SSD drive which was previously 512 GB.
Right.
Is 1 terabyte.
Understood.
Definitely required, right, for large data sets,
Okay.
because it's a high dimensional problem. Deep learning algorithms are applied to high dimensional problem, and obviously the GPU specification would also change. Like instead of your earlier specification of NVIDIA GeForce GTX 1660, it would be NVIDIA GeForce RTX 2080, which is a higher GPU, much more powerful GPU,
Right.
or much more robust GPU
Okay.
for performing high high computing tasks.
Sure.
So these are high and intensive computing tasks,
Okay.
and it definitely require notch of specifications in terms of the hardware.
Understood.
Right.
Understood.
But there are obviously some of these requirements which are meant for software also.
Right. Right. Another common question before we end this session is that a lot of people ask, in terms of the Windows machine and the Apple machines, right? So, any preference, and also maybe since a lot of people use Apple machines as well, any specification you want to mention about like that?
Yeah. So Windows. I suppose 10 or 11 or even Windows Pro would be good operating system, choice
Right.
of operating system. Similarly, when it comes to Mac OS, I think it would be High Sierra or even later one, which have been distributed later to High Sierra. In terms of if somebody is using Linux, then it would be any recent distribution of Linux.
Okay.
That would be requirement. And there are additional requirements which are IDE, because what kind of integrated development environment
Correct.
one would use. And to users, I just would like to maybe throw some light, shed some light what it is all about. So for coding or maybe development, you need a integrated development environment. Integrated development environment means that in the same environment, you could code, you could debug, you could test, you could validate your code, you could even try some deployment of that particular code. Right. So it covers the entire software development life cycle. All this thing is integrated into one environment. So such kind of IDE which allows you for writing the code or developing the code, debugging it, right? Even maybe tracing back the errors, right? Seeing the code dependencies, right? As well as testing or validating the code,
Sure.
right? These are all and provided in an environment which is called integrated development.
Right.
And now the good part is what has been an enabler for Python is that the IDEs have been provided through Jupyter Notebook, right? So you could use Jupyter Notebook, which is very much prevalent, as well as then there's a Visual Studio Code, Studio way of doing it. So all the what it enables is that all the libraries which are required for your machine learning task would be available in that environment.
Understood.
Right? So you need not to figure out that you need to download this library or that library.
Right.
Through one script, one single script, your library will be imported and you can work in that integrated environment to do your modeling and algorithmic building tasks.
Sure. Wonderful. I mean that clears a lot of cobweb. That's like a lot of people's mind. What to use, what kind of machines. Very basic, but very informative and like very important as well. Right. So thank you once again for sparing your time, joining us, and enlightening us with so much of information. Thanks so much for joining.
Yeah. Thanks.
Right.
Thanks.
So with that, we end this episode of today's podcast. And as you all know, we have been conducting a series of podcasts on different topics related to AI/ML application, data science, of course, applications in finance. So we'll keep our effort in towards that. We'll keep conducting this kind of podcast series. See you in the next podcast. Keep following us. Thank you.